So Dom has a war model that, as it should, takes into account offense and defense, and that determines the effect you have on the team and how many wins you provide. And so he released based on his model, the top 10 most valuable players in the league right now, and notably, Jonathan Huberdeau was left off that list. And that led to a little bit of a beef on Twitter between Huberdeau's agent, Alan Walsh, and Dom. They were going back and forth. Alan Walsh said some questionable things, said that Dom was a homer and that he was kind of didn't know what he was talking about. It was funny from the outside looking in. But let's actually lean into this conversation. But where do you stand on Jonathan Huberdeau and his claim to be a Hart favorite?
Yeah, like it wasn't just a little beef; it was the whole cow. He called him an embarrassment or something like that. It was kind of savage. I mean, I don't know. Like, before I get into this, to you, what is the Hart supposed to represent?
It's the most valuable player to their team.
Right? And let me be clear, right now there are two nominees that are most valuable to their team. Do you want to guess who they are in my head that I think?
Matthews and
Shesterkin, for sure. Like, for 100% Shesterkin, if the league ended right now, I agree with what you said before. He's going to win the Hart. Matthews is very close. And let me just be clear. This year, no one come at me and say, this is my top 5. This year, there is a pile of garbage between Matthews and Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
And then you go into other names. But when we talk about Jonathan Huberdeau not being in the top 10, I just thought it was so funny to see a GM argue about a purely objective model, right?
Yeah.
Like, if Dom Luszczyszyn came out and said, I don't think Jonathan Huberdeau is in the top 10 of Hart because I just don't think he's good defensively, then Walsh has a leg to stand on. But Luszczyszyn's reply was like so fitting. He said, if Austin played in Florida and Huberdeau played in Toronto, nothing would change in this model because it's purely objective.
It's numbers,
right? Like, how do you go on Twitter and argue about an objective model?
I think that's just an emotional agent wanting to back his guy who is having a career year. Understandably so, but he took it to a place you didn't have to take it.
For sure. So when we talk about the most valuable player to their team, this is a lot different for anyone listening about who I think will win the Hart, because oftentimes who does win the Hart is the guy with the most points.
Yeah.
Who I think should win the Hart, which is what this model seeks to represent. Huberdeau is without a doubt one of the best offensive players in the league this year.
Yeah.
78 points. The league lead is at 81. Like, he's right there.
Yeah.
Often the Hart goes to the most points, like I said. So I understand why Walsh was a little bit speculative of this, because he has a very one-sided model about what he thinks the Hart Trophy measures. But a very big component to a player's abilities are their defense, right? Something that is so fitting for Jonathan Huberdeau, which corroborates this argument that he is not in the top 10, is his defense. There are only 2 Hart candidates in history that have had a negative 5-on-5 expected goals differential when you're on the ice. And for anyone that doesn't know what that means that this stat projects when player A is on the ice. We think there will be more goals, more points when they are on the ice for their team, or less points on the ice. So if it's negative, that means if Jonathan Huberdeau is on the ice, the model expects him to allow more goals than his line puts up. Like, think about how crazy that is. That's bad for any player, but he's leading the league in points.
Yeah, so it just makes it sound like even all those points he puts off, that can't cover for how bad he is defensively.
Like to go negative is already bad enough, but when you put up 100 points, to have a negative 5-on-5 expected goals percentage means, like, you don't skate back. Like, you take your skates off when the puck goes the other way. Like, how do you give a guy a Hart Trophy when he's that bad defensively?
History suggests you can't.
No, you can't. And so the only argument I see against it is that, last year when Connor McDavid won the Hart Trophy, or 2 years ago, he was bad defensively and he still won it. There's 2 things I have against that. Number one, according to Advanced Stats, when he won the Hart Trophy, he was average defensively,
which was more than good enough considering what the damage he does going forward.
Exactly. Like, this year, he's terrible defensively. You mentioned, like, we had a little bit of a constructive argument about Matthews versus Austin off the air, and you told me about Connor McDavid's poor defensive play, and, like, you're completely correct. This year, he's terrible defensively. Right. But that year that he won it, he was average. And secondly, the year that he won it last year, the offensive gap was so astronomical
Yeah.
I don't care if he puts the puck in his own net twice. You got to give the guy the Hart.
Yeah.
He had 105 points in 5 games, and the next best was 84. That's a 21-point difference in 55 games because of COVID.
And I think the guy second place was Draisaitl, was it not?
It was Draisaitl.
So that just emphasizes that argument. Like,
Yeah.
he's clearly the most important to his team when you have arguably the second best player in the world on the same team.
Yeah, like when you projected out to a full 82 game season, he was projected to lead the league in scoring by 40 freaking points.
That's insane.
Like, I don't like, fine, if Jonathan Huberdeau leads the league this year in points by 40, give him the Hart.
Sure.
Right? But when he leads the league at most in 2 points, the fact that he has a negative 5-on-5 goal expected differential means that this guy is not even in the top 10. Like, I'm sorry, he's not.
Yeah.
He's not. You talked about this a little bit earlier on in our episodes, and I completely agree, where you said that oftentimes when you have offensively prolific players, they kind of start to think that they don't need to play defense.
Sometimes, unfortunately.
Right? And maybe that's why Huberdeau isn't playing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, admittedly, I haven't watched the Florida games very often, but the numbers tell me what I need to know. And if it is, it's kind of a shame. He doesn't even play on their first line with Barkov anymore. And I don't know why that is. Maybe Andrew Brunette likes to split up his team because he has so much talent. But could it also be that Barkov's one of the best two-way players in the league? And if you want to use him in a shutdown line again in the playoffs, you just can't have Huberdeau playing with him.
That's a great point. I didn't think of that.
You can. And maybe you sacrifice some offense, but I'd rather have a line with Barkov and guys who are going to help on the defensive end and still potentially score some goals than have a quote-unquote shutdown line with a guy who's not going to skate back.
100%. Like, when we think about defensive aspects with respect to the Hart, that's why Austin Matthews is so special. Like, we've alluded to it. He's one of the best two-way forwards in the league. And this year he's going to put up 55 goals and 110 points. So he's more offensively gifted than Huberdeau this year and is playing it at 2 ways.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah, it just made me laugh to see that Huberdeau is that bad.
Yeah.
Defensively, putting up 100 points, and you still allow more points against than for. I don't understand how that's possible.
It shouldn't be.
No.
If you tried. We talked about this. We were watching a Leafs game one night and we were just talking defense is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Huberdeau wanted to, he could be great defensively because he has all the skills.
Yep.
He just doesn't seem to maybe want to put that effort in. I don't watch Florida games, but shouldn't be that bad defensively.
Yeah, I agree. So just to summarize, before we finish, is obviously Walsh is going to be upset because he sees, Hart Trophy equals most points, equals Jonathan Huberdeau in the top 3 argument.
Yeah.
But the model says it all. You cannot be that bad defensively and win the Hart unless you put up 140 points and lead the league by 40 points.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I agree.
Yeah.